to this Easy Learn podcast, episode 10. On a demand and net this time capsules to talk about this news in the UK, discuss stories and give it their opinion. But the users said after DisNews, several people in news affects a lot as they were reported and generally, as many of us already know, may have been represented in the media. So the name of this podcast is in the rush to try and address this point. So the first story is from the BBC. In the headline is concerned as health service for chairs a prayer goalpost. The chairman of Stormont Health Committee is called for. So, bans people in base as a company supplying chairs to the health service in Northern Ireland is on the brink of bust. NRS Healthcare is contracted by the Department of Health to provide wheelchairs to patients being discharged from hospital who require assistance and help. Bips and stands suspected to run out of cash by the end of the week. DOH is developing contingency support people. Philip McGuigan, a Sinn Féin MLA who traced the healthcare team to BBC News. Northern Ireland he was concerned that the odds of the company being on the brink of collapse. Together, I've written to the health minister to establish the Department of Health's reliance in this company to ask if the huge banners in guys, patrons, the safety and well-being must be balanced. And I myself guessed that it was exploring options to safeguard services at Disneyland and the committee employs about 1,500 people across the UK and is based in Leicestershire. It funds supplies a wide range of equipment from wheelchairs and all to hospital beds and residents, which monitor falls. Costly's protect the site in this company also maintains repairs equipment. IRS Healthcare's account says of the cost these highways up last year. He's also understood to have gained these money on service contracts with the councils. A couple of firms that have been to the impact of inflation and rising costs, including lowest national insurance. A statement DOH said contingencies are being developed. To support these services, the features are considering that most mature service users continue to receive high quality care. Well, although this is a community initiative, as the ex-boss said, it's affecting the market at the moment. He's concerned that this could happen anywhere, whether it's regional or parts of the UK, obviously for DC, issue it. Also already before DC, the nation, unless I give it could be becoming tends to get across an issue with how these systems maintain the ability of current payment users, petrology users to pay the stuff for hard party to get good care. So we've really seen an issue with this in the last 3 weeks. Hopefully there is contingency, but it just shows how much disabled people rely on these firms and like a base bar, and these big suppliers do have issues. Don't know really what the solution is. Obviously, in terms of procurement, if you get a national supplier, it's easier to deal with. One that's hard than have lots of local ones, and any business can fail at any time. See that it's maybe looking at other solutions, especially in the face of cost of living, etc. and so forth. And just having honest conversations with suppliers in terms of not just sanitary, etc. And so, of course, I say the problem is councils themselves should go with finances as everyone is. You only hope so. It's kind of insane. And also the other councils across England the world looking at this and talking their kind of joint and their suppliers to see and conversations about the financial health of those suppliers as well to see all the mechanisms and other systems don't suffer the same way. It's a worrying time. For me, simple purposely, we're in the midst of the effects of the welfare budget cuts, etc. and so forth. to reflect, but seems to be wrong as hell. Problems coming in twos and threes, and it seems to be like multiple things, and it has 3 weeks or months that seem to be affecting disabled people and widespread in terms of the things that they rely on and services they particularly rely on. So hopefully, as I say, all the authorities look at this and get into some plans in place, stop it happening in other areas. Next story comes from this DisNews service, and the headline is "Court Inquiry is of huge rollback in rights and support since pandemic." Disabled people have undergone a huge rollback in their rights and social security support since the pandemic, despite the rights campaigner and advisors told the private inquiry. Despite politicians promising they would be building back better, Joan Sanson told the inquiry that this has not happened to disabled people. So she believed that there had been a huge rollback in our rights and benefits and the welfare reforms, so the politicians were not to that statement. Samson, who lives in Spotted Arizona, said Belfast, when I was on Universal Care tried to care workers at the building back. Better phrase, had rolled off their tongue every day during the pandemic, even though there's since been no evidence of it. As for the most important point she wanted to get across into the inquiry, she said pandemic had shown that co-production and deliberative democracy, in which big decisions are made for discussion and debate amongst citizens, were key to living up to that slowly and building back better. She said, I think the legislators have to get back to the freedom of enterprises. It's an opportunity for everyone to be involved in legislation that concerns society and the daily life. I suppose I'd say it's an opportunity for everyone to have a voice, but to be heard and ensure that nothing about us or others becomes reality in the legislation. Speaking on behalf of the Learning Disabled People's Organisation, Betty Action is one of the few disabled people to have given direct or evidence to an inquiry session about their pandemic experiences. Evidence as part of the Module 6 of the UK COVID-19 inquiry, which is examining the impact of the pandemic on adult social care sector across the UK. Because she was told she was clinically extremely vulnerable to the virus, she had to obey strict lockdown rules for more than 700 days during the pandemic. She said the pandemic and its restrictions had a lot of impact on the very beginning, especially because of staff were getting sick and because there was a shortage of PPE and personal protective equipment. She said he had been described how tied to the Queen's University Belfast allowed her to source PPE when there was a shortage at the beginning of the pandemic. But such shortages meant that on one day there was just 2 members of staff, one due to support and 2 disabled persons. Throughout the inquiry at the time, I just kept thinking about my friends in other situations that lived in their own homes, needed care, no one get any care. Some people that were stuck in bed for days at the beginning of the shortages. Samson there said that during the pandemic, the trust brought the disability community very much closer together as a global community fight for equality and rights that being tried before but never succeeded. To equalities had fallen away all the little pieces was to cut back so-called normal. But they haven't was perspective on the effects of the COVID and what's happened since. I think a lot, if not all, will probably notice that kind of feedback because it seems to be, we've seen, particularly obviously in the current context of welfare before and social care before, and seeing despite whispers from previous historical event and despite government seems to be no active plan to have any household form of social care to look at the evident problems there. Least of all, fix the shortfall in funding and money. Let's be honest, seems to be more about older people's care. Specifically, what was noticed when it's posted in the news, seems to be this broad focus on older people's care rather than other disabled people, working age disabled people, disabled children, etc. So for that, my views on that is, school person that I am, I think, you have the two together, whether it's talk of welfare reform or whether it's talk of social care. I think my personal view is that particularly for older people, in terms of society's perception, general society's perception is that obviously everyone knows what to good quality, high quality care, or at least I feel perception of what society serves. With older people who it's like the perception is that the majority of older people are disabled due to old age rather than long-term disability that started when they were younger. So for instance, that become disabled in life due to old age, frailty, etc. and so forth. That has a large share of evil, quote-unquote, from society contribute to society by be working, so that be raising the good generations in terms of parenting, etc. and so forth, volunteering or contributing. So I think the perceptions they contribute to society, whereas obviously a lot of perceptions of non-disabled people, especially given the narratives that are portrayed in the media, that we take our part to rather contribute to society, i.e. food benefits, etc. and so forth. It's very always comes with a bit explored in the media or expressed in the media through certain narratives as drains on resources, whether it's for the NHS, whether it be social care, not money for social and so forth, benefits system. So I think that's why there's always this cage of elderly people because to wide the public, to what the big condition to is through narratives that get behind the story of a care and crisis. It is focused around older people because obviously they deserve care. View the person that needs care deserves to care, but they will resonate with that more rather than when they talk about working with disabled people, but because obviously the media narrative and societal narratives see workers, disabled people as no contribution to the greater society, which all those disabled people, and I've said this many times before in previous episodes, is true, or narrative stick, perception stick, and I think that's what it is. As for the rollback of rights, well, that's basically let's be seen at the moment with the welfare reforms, etc. and so forth. We're seeing the rollback of rights, and as we've seen over the last 14 years with the Conservative administration and the coalition, etc. and so forth in 2010. And before that, the brown and black rights, the voting debate, etc. and so forth, scared to be barred out by social services, whereby, as I've said many times before, is every day that saw in 2008, onwards, culminating the coalition's got to 2010 in social carers, but it's seen as negative forward. It's seen that really in terms of community care, the showing in of community care in London to be care at. It's basically it was, yes, disabled people pushed and lobbied for changes, and they got those changes to an extent in the way they were shaped for by the neoliberal accepted government at the time, but also it was a time that was a convenience for those in that political administration, because obviously we needed reform, but also reform going hand in hand with this reduction of
long-stay hospitals, etc. and so forth. Those kind of care homes, institutions that many disabled people have lived in for years and years. They cost money, and there wasn't the budget for it, so it wasn't just a case of just handing disabled people bites of the plate. It was a case of conceding to some of the needs of disabled people, also creating a package of legislation that actually also coincided with reform and restructuring and financial consolidation in town costs, closing down homes and hospitals and so forth. Trying cost-cutting messages to streamline social care at that point in time, which one way or another has continued since then. Yes, there has been more money. At times there has been, but also at the same time, alongside that, there's been cuts in other areas, and those who rely on social care have noticed that, and those outside of that, they simply see that. They see the headlines where money's been put in, etc. and so forth, but they don't see what goes on alongside that, where those departments are, year on year, they are budgets to social care budgets. And it's, increasingly harder, not only just to get specifically in community care, because there's other areas where budgets are inflated, but it's almost like a kind of got a bigger pie, piece of the pie for one area of social care in terms of one target group, whether it be older people, whether it be learning disabilities, etc. and so forth, or mental health at any given time, and then you have to be the reduce the size of the piece that another area of social care might get, and particularly for those who rely on community care. It's harder than ever to be, not just to get, for instance, care rate in individual budget in our areas. To hold on to that, it's you've allocated hours, you've thought of those hours, you've proved those needs, to then continue to prove those needs and hold on to the same level of care that you're receiving is increasingly hard, and has been for previous 2 to a decade. And one alternative to that is instead of receiving care in your own home, is obviously to concede and to look at maybe going to residential care, which I won't agree is a higher cost. But these are the logistics that need to be moved, such as on an individual basis. So, for instance, certain elements of benefits, certain elements of council tax relief, etc. and so forth. Also, accessible housing that gets eased, because if people have got room in their care home, then obviously there's no need for accessible housing. So that's one of the issues that get kind of alleviated. Is they did once, but no need obligations for them out the total and so forth. So there's checks and balances there. But also, even that area of social care is really the crunch. It's no longer the perception of care homes that we're all making hay while the sun shines, and they're certainly not making profits, because a lot of them still are. But the cost of living is very difficult. And, with cuts to council budgets, severe cuts over the last few years in particular, the budgets that they give to pass on to care providers, care home providers, haven't kept paid to it, inflation and cost of living, so even they're having to cut their crops accordingly. I'm not saying that they're not making any profits, because obviously some still are. There's there's a lot of them that are struggling, and there's some that have even, some big providers that have gone to the local body and said, look, we can't do it anymore, you're subsidising costs that aren't passed on, and we can no longer fulfill our role as the provider because the costs are spiraling. Obviously, there's some that are had to continue, but the situation. But as for the solutions to the situation, comes down to previous occasions, new political thinking. And new political thinking is out there, and one thing that isn't being done as the lady referenced in the evidence is the joint of thinking with citizens who to be involved in their, solutions to their own care needs, or social care needs, or healthcare needs, so forth, whatever. But their lives, because one thing that power doesn't want to do is concede control. And this new the disability equality Act, I think the 2004 amendment was the duty to consult. So even with, as we've seen, with the welfare benefits, impact assessments, etc., or consultations, and then publishing impact assessments, and then providing feedback in accessible reports or formats for everyone to be able to read, contribute to, and often see already with this, with the welfare reforms, those accessibility reports, one accessible tool, and this is something that local authority governments also struggle with because it's, I suppose, you can argue the nature of providing, and we need democracy, there's still things that those in power maybe, find it difficult, and collaborative working with citizens would be one of them, and it's supposed to take time. But I think disabled in particular, for all the reasons I've already said earlier on about exceptions of disabled people ones, but even more individuals that work closer. It's difficult to know, to see how quickly that will change, even though historically that's been done, because obviously, as already said, things that led to a lot of the words that we've seen in the last 30 years was collaboration. It was the people pushing and forcing the issue, and protests in the streets, etc. and so forth. But I think changes stay the same, doesn't it? So, if you made a breakthrough, but then fall back and essentially that's we have to. The last 15 years is born about pre-19 times where so people's words have been rolled back, and it's got to be willing to listen to us and to collaborate with us, and also be within this for us to trust those in power, which we can juggle to, because you've seen the evolution of our rights, so it's difficult, but it's a difficult way forward. I personally think one of the solutions to have disability think tanks. One that we have kind of disability scholars, you've got obviously the prominent ones. Hopes of disability thinking would be the disability and studies department and everything. But I think we need fully fledged think tanks to come together, and it's difficult because of the current situation. A lot of them are free to find themselves in public, which is where kind of bring over several entrepreneurs with scouts and so the academics with rights need to come together and maybe speak to the wider business community, maybe get funding for think tanks, etc. and so forth, or set up charitable groups and whatever outside of just the digital campaigning, and kind of think outside the box, how to create political thoughts and lobbying, etc. and so forth, and just try and kind of engage in the political process outside when it's simply just speaking to those in Westminster, just step outside of that. And got involved in around legislation, going from that perspective and seeing if you can move with that and see the pitfalls, etc. How what's possible and what's not possible, and get quite political thinking rather than just think you're on the grassroots, think you're on the ground or something. Getting the political imagination from somewhere, and we're not going to get it from those inside one. And then we need several business federation. I think we need a social care coalition, and I think we need political groups outside of strictly campaigning groups. I think we need political organisations as well. Was to kind of forge a leap out into the deeper into the 21st century if we're going to have any chance of kind of forging a positive future. I know there's affiliation martyrs, groups of martyrs on the left, so forth. My only issue with that is the left. Centric means production, etc. and so forth, and there's only several people we know what the means of production in terms of the digital one. And work culture and so forth, because many of us can't talk. If we can, we're not given the right opportunities to work and the environment in which to want to contribute in a way that we can. So I'll always be back. The idea that Marxism is going to say that what happens when we can't contribute. Part of this equal, Dutch. When we're outside of that, where is our place within that? Because it still leaves us on the outside because we're not able to contribute in terms of work. So for me, I come to the solutions in that. The only good that business to around the left is, I believe, the universal basic income, but even then, you run into the same problems as run into the same problem of disabled people, many disabled people needing a high level of income than everybody else because what needs are greater. So even that doesn't need to be the issue. And it's the reason for intervention to think tanks and political groups to look into these issues where from a purely disability lens. Story 3 is from BBC, Justin Timberlake with Alzheimer's disease or nurses. US singer Justin Timberlake is withdrawing easily from lung disease. The 44-year-old taking a shot of 6 nurses pain tomorrow he would be on stage, having a massive amount of nerve pain or just reading grades every day equals singers. Kwan Yu with the singers shared his illness the next round from the conclusion is forget tomorrow or tour. Lung disease is a bacterial infection that can be spread to humans by infected ticks, licks. Few people don't know some treatment for the disease can continue to have symptoms of tiredness, eggs, and lost mojo that can last for years. Timberlake said he was faced with the decision to stop his tour early. He bought and decided to get going. First, he said, as many of you know, I'm a busy part of the person running the festival tour, went to see really upbeat about what's going on in Maine, sort of things. I think balance and how they choose. I recognise lung disease, which I don't say. See for practically but shows some non-departmental spelling disease. The experience of disease when husband has the way differently can be relentless and debilitating but mentally physical. So America's Centers for Disease and Control, French. CDC, patients treated with antibiotics at the early stage of the infection, usually for a quarter complete. It adds most patients treated in later stages. Onboard antibiotics, but some may have suffered long-term damage to nerves or joints. Indeed, not way any film of him is understood all the abundance. Tennant said Joel, before things that way stress but has been. Started calling electricity from some plants social need for different forms to the next time as well as double years. Didn't let you from the boy band from what you say, is an entanglement. He's just so wants to be guessing and because what's what are.
No, no.
Yes, then. Again, there's a whole bunch coming out with the diagnosis. I think again raises awareness, obviously help ease slaves, seeing treatment and covering. He's raising awareness. It's got this speaking out and doing that. If he reaches to, and yeah, it's more best. But there's stories with this bit of new service. Danny's was complete agent Bro about to drive a course for which a user reported discrimination to be shot. Several bus passenger component has been left inside the conspiracy, showing dehumanizing and foreign messages exchanged between drivers about food, Sprite, and even enforcement to be shot. A Region Midlands has now launched an urgent investigation of the insurance screenshots described addressed messages. Charlie Johnston Brent from Coventry has been seeking justice for discrimination he's faced at the hands of a Reef Midlands in his drivers for the last 3 years. His twice received compensation if the company failed to ensure drivers were trained in how to secure his wardrobe safely and took trips to their stiff hospital appointments for 8 years. That left him with a broken ankle and 2 bones. It has had to complain again when the driver refused to allow him to board his vehicle and told him he was banned because he had previously complained about discrimination and safety issues. This order we were paying further $8,500 costs and damages. These cases of discrimination that didn't work in meant of revamps to try and prove he stopped training. But now, Johnston Brown has discovered what? Johnston Brent has discovered. And members of a private WhatsApp group of drivers have been exchanging offensive repeating messages about infallible nasty stories with this bit of new service about discrimination. Messages saying put in as that's black history and made fun of his white kiss me relying about his injuries, described TNS as a fake news profile. Disturbing one of the staff members wrote, I think shoot the fact explicit if you see him telling him to worry. I will work earning him his benefits. Another one commented on a social media post which shows Johnson Prince standing away from his portrait. Pick the other one as well. Johnson Brent is now considered murder to go action against the Reef for harassment, discrimination, and defamation that sent a letter before action to the court. So the company that the outside messages were deeply distressing in his ways of being nice and violent and have left him in a state of constant fear. That's painted by attacks and causes anxiety struggles just like in his that he avoids public transport whenever he can, particularly Reef vehicles. Wow. She's obviously helping this to her lady. Right? No, man, not surprised, man. Not surprised. So many cases where you see disabled people being refused, particularly wheelchair users, might have been having issues getting onto buses, taxis, trains. So, and if you're upset to talk about accessibility in trains and the fact that peers struggle to access transport safely and have to call up platforms etc., quantum platforms etc. and so forth, but this is totally acceptable when you have to, and especially given the fact that the individuals taken action against this company several times. I mean, that's thousands of pounds, it won't be £8,500. I would have thought lessons have been there, but really no, I think it's, you know, it's societal as well, so the company itself, you know, you can't just say for every single employee and views that they hold, well, they should take an extra care to make sure that passengers are safe and secure, and they should take their own action when serious injuries have occurred. It is interesting to know how you got hold of those messages. It's a whistleblower, but not whispering in traditional sense, because clearly if the whistleblowing, that message was being sent to the company director, to someone within the company, rather than being sent team privately, or maybe there was a whistleblower, the internal inquiry wasn't getting fully established appropriately, and then he's seeing those messages. But help actions taken, and trainings improved, and they try to get better at dealing with disabled passengers. But oh no, more breath, because we seem to hear the stories so many different times. It will just happen to yet another person, and I don't understand what's difficult really about taking time out to pull out around to let someone come on, start the minutes. Takes a couple of minutes if that. And if it's a case of just, it takes too much time, you adjust the bus times. You just take an educated guess and you adjust the bus times to destination about a couple of minutes, so it's just ridiculous. And obviously it's the same with taxi drivers, blackout drivers, etc. and so forth. So to me, that makes even less sense, because to me, with cab drivers, it's guaranteed fare. There's so many fare dodgers, people that kind of run out of the taxi without paying, etc. and so forth. Nowadays, the drivers not killing you, something him, but it still happens, still can happen, or abused by people, maybe blown drunk at my house, and so forth. And it's like, disabled people is very often a guaranteed share, and more often than not, eat more than you have. So I don't really understand why they're so against disabled passengers. And again, it's one of them where disabled people can't win. It's like if we had the alternative way of travelling, genuine alternative way of travelling, because I'm sorry, most people would get on for the depends what to begin with, and also the way climate change, etc. Even people do it for alternative ways of travel, local governments, etc. Centres, whatever it might be, of the kind of keen shifting people towards public transport more and more and more. And even with alternative transport, say for instance, when it's mobility car, or what they call mobility car, like industry cars, so blah 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 blah, you can't have that. So the kind of mobility car, the can't travel public transport, can't travel on the pavement because quite often there's no drop curb for those with who are using wheelchairs or scooters, etc. Or the cars parked in the wrong way or whatever, and it's just can't be one way or the other. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And again, 80 years on, just be discrimination. More than 30 years. So, but no, 30 years, I'm saying. But more than 30 years on from, the scenes of disabled people generations ago tying themselves to buses for the rights that, successive governments and their governments have tried to take away in the last 15 years, and we still become back to the start. And yes, so people ask they just ask me for why to leave. So hopefully this company learns lessons, and people, other companies also learn lessons from this. Because again, from an economic perspective, £5,000. And if you take some action again, chances are it's probably going to bring another pay out. It's so much you can keep losing money hand over fist. perhaps for discrimination. And, the only bad thing is that he's got the means to actually take action against these guys. A lot of things that people just leave in tea because they don't have either the financial means and knowledge, etc., to push campaigns forward and go all the way and take action against these companies. But, obviously enough. Anyway, I hope you feel all the best and hope his experiences with public transport are great. And that's it for the next episode. So join us.